Return to Dreamland. An acquaintance of Aubrey's, a reporter for 17 News, had a slow news day and did a special interest story on me. This woman had tried to help before. I had been on the news back when I was found and once or twice since then. But this time she did a real portrait of me, and it went through the syndicate and then got picked up by some other stations around the country. I wasn't sure I wanted the attention now, but Aubrey had been working so hard I couldn't back out. No one in town said much to me about it, and I was well on my way to forgetting it when, 2 months later, the station got a call from a one Stacey Abrams of Warwick, Rhode Island. She was about my age and claimed to be my wife. Aubrey's friend tried to call me, but as soon as I saw her name on the screen, I put it on airplane mode and went to lie down in the shed. Aubrey gave me the news when she got home. Apparently, the story had bubbled around the internet until it landed on this lady's cell phone, and she recognized me immediately. Aubrey sat down on the cot next to me. She had something to say, obviously, and I was guessing it was about kids. I had been thinking about that all day. Well, really for months. But right then it felt like I was on Maury Povich when he would reveal whether someone was the real father, and I couldn't breathe. And sure enough, she said there was a son, Jamie, 7 years old. My real name was Jamie too, Jamie Child. This Stacey Abrams had apparently not taken my name. So I had a son out there who would barely know me, and I had no real excuse, not one a 7-year-old would understand. I hadn't been at war or in prison. I had just been wandering around. I wondered if anyone had made fun of him for having a father that ran away. The police in Rhode Island were pretty sure she was telling the truth, and Detective Brown agreed. He came to tell me all the same info, not to be a good guy, but to see what my reaction was. He added that I had been working for a while in Saratoga Springs and then Syracuse. I guess to tell me he thought I must have left them in sound mind. I could see his jaw muscles working. One thing about cops, they always think they can see through lies and read your mind. I think they are just looking into their own souls. I think they are just desperate and dishonest, and that's why they think everybody else is too. Most of them, anyway. Well, let's say some of them. I thought that name, Jamie Child, was a weird one. It sounded made up, and it didn't ring a bell at all. I thought it was all a hoax. Seriously, my child's name was Jamie, and I was Jamie Child? And this lady had for some reason not taken my name, like perhaps because she wasn't really my wife? But there were pictures, and I was definitely the guy in them, even if the expression on my face was kind of sad and preoccupied. I think people's faces revert to their baseline emotion when a picture is being taken, as long as they don't have a canned picture smile. If they are haunted, they'll look haunted in the picture. And something was definitely bothering me, that much I could tell, and my face wasn't like it was these days, which was far more relaxed, and I'd say younger looking. I looked up Warwick online, and it confirmed my suspicions. Now, I'm sure Warwick has plenty of good people in it, so I shouldn't make a huge blanket statement about the whole city, but the jacket fit. It was run down, crime-ridden, an all-around S-hole, and just the sort of place some low woman who wanted a little fame and maybe a little cash would come from. The biggest news I could find about Warwick was a nightclub fire, the station nightclub. It looked like a horror show. I talked to her on the phone, and she had a thick accent, nothing like mine. Was I from there? She said I was from Massachusetts. She said we had lived in Warwick, so it seemed to me if that were true, something must have gone downhill for me. If you're moving up, the road goes the other direction. She said Jamie didn't know who I was and that she didn't think it was a good idea for us to meet. I disagreed, of course, and for some reason she relented, and we agreed to meet. the three of us. But the police found my place of birth was New Hampshire. That didn't make her a liar. She only said I was living in Massachusetts when we met. But there was also a question about whether we were ever legally married. To me, the whole thing smelled to high heaven. Reunion. So, the shitty part of the story comes now, and you'll forgive me if I keep it a little more concise. It isn't that fun to tell. I couldn't fly with no ID, which I technically still didn't have, even though I'll leave it out. Aubrey told me to take her car. She really pulled through for me again and again that year. I had no right to drive, but I just kept the speed down and slept in a tent in a park or somewhere else inconspicuous. No police bothered me the whole way there. Once I even slept in the car and got woken up, but the cop didn't ask for ID. He just told me a better place to park. That was in Indiana. I met Stacy and Jamie at a diner, and no offense, but she looked like a recovering meth head. Either that or a new meth head on her way down. The son was cute enough, although I didn't think he looked like me. The hair was about the same shade of dirty blonde, but the facial features didn't match. I didn't think so. She didn't act too glad to see me, which actually made me believe her story more. A real gold digger would pretend to be ecstatic, but with her, it was all business. Jamie was apprehensive. If he had wanted to meet me, his slightly hunched head told me he didn't like what he saw. We asked him if he recognized me, and he said, sort of, but he didn't look me in the eye. Stacy held up a picture of me and him, and he looked back and forth at it a few times, but, well, you know pictures. If you don't know someone, they can really look different in real life. And he probably had an enhanced vision of me in his mind that didn't match the reality. Not to mention that his vision would have been a couple of years old. I think he wished I'd get back in my car and leave. After ordering food, she wanted to know why I left. I tried to explain that I couldn't remember, but telling someone you've been in a fugue is like telling them you have back pain. They try to give you the benefit of the doubt, but they have a hard time believing it, especially when it makes for the perfect excuse. She got less friendly as the meal went on, and we skipped dessert. We dropped Jamie off with Stacy's mother so we could go back to her apartment and really talk. I said bye to him, which was a little awkward since we were in two cars, and he gave a little wave and made some kind of sound I couldn't understand before he went to his grandmother. Stacy got out and told him a few things. What she was really doing was turning him around and sending him into the house so there would be no proper goodbye. We never went to her apartment. She stopped a few blocks down and got into my car. She said she couldn't believe that I had just forgotten everything. I said I had a hard time believing her whole story, which put her in tears for 10 minutes. She said I was always a bad father and a lousy husband. She wanted me to go back to California, and she wanted child support with no visitation rights. She said she would have thought about visitation, but the cold way I treated Jamie at the restaurant told her everything she needed to know. I said that was BS. I tried to talk to him and told her she had no right to send me packing before even one day had gone by. Maybe we hadn't gotten along or something, and maybe Jamie was nervous his first time meeting me. But he was still my son, and I had a right to be in his life. And I didn't know how she expected child support from someone who mowed lawns for a living and whose big move up in the world was just having moved into a garden shed. Not to mention the fact that this trip, mostly paid for by an advance from Aubrey, would set me back months. She said I always went off like that. You always have some argument, she said. She gave me a piece of paper with bank account information from my own account. I hadn't been gone long enough to be legally declared dead, so she hadn't been able to get her grubby hands on it, but she wanted me to withdraw it and give it to her. It was $2,480. But the joke was on her. Without ID, I couldn't withdraw money either. She said, well, get on it, and then went to her car and drove back toward her mother's. I left the next day, but not before she called and said I could get started on the payments if we did some TV interviews. I didn't even know what to say to that. She thought we were going to make money with this story. I reminded her that no judge had said I owed her anything. I hung up the phone, got in the car, and left, which gave me lots of time to think. It was miserable. 4 days of hell. It wasn't lost on me that I had the perfect opportunity to disappear again. And one day I pulled over and went to a park bench out of sight of the car and tried to will myself back into a fugue. But I stubbornly remained right there on that bench and in my own mind. So, that wasn't too concise, but it could have been longer. Back home. By the time I got back to California, Aubrey had come through again. We had been texting back and forth, so she knew what was going on, and she found me an attorney who would work pro bono. His name was Scott, and he was a pretty good guy. Pretty young and still optimistic about the world. Soon after, I at last got that wonderful SSN card I had wanted so much, and I could start in on real life, at least a legitimate one, even if it would contain an endless journey of child support payments I'd never be able to make. The police didn't wait long to pay me a visit. They had all kinds of questions about how I got all the way to Warwick, Rhode Island and back without any trouble. They said they could get me into all kinds of trouble for driving without a license, but they would overlook it if I would come clean. I told them nothing, which was the first benefit of that attorney. He said not to talk to the detectives. I thought that was because they would be helping Stacy, but he said it was because you don't know what they're looking for. They did another round of fingerprints and were getting ready to put me through a whole lot of process as punishment, as Scott put it. But he came in and put an end to it. They could communicate with him, which they did, once, in writing. And they had one interview with both of us. There was not much to tell them, but Scott told me afterward that what they really wanted to know was what kind of crimes I had committed along the way. As far as they were concerned, I was the perfect profile of a serial killer. I had missed that vibe, so I was glad I had him and wished he'd been there all the way back when they first found me. The psychs had me come around too, for some reason, but they were easy to shake off. Aubrey was there to vouch for me, and Scott came too. Scott thought they were trying to set me up to be committed, and I'd heard enough of their leading questions before not to take any bait. It was nothing. But then Warwick started reaching out to me like an unpeaceful ghost. I got a strange letter. It was handwritten from an old friend named Jimmy, who said he was sorry he missed me when I was around and to give him a buzz next time I was in Bridgewater, and also what was my number and or email. I didn't trust that at all, so I gave it to Scott, who put it in a file. I contacted my bank, of course. They were able to transfer the money, but they also had an unexpected request. Would I please come and gather the contents of my safe deposit box, or have a trusted surrogate do so? I didn't have the key, of course, but I found out from Stacy that she did. Why didn't you say something earlier? I asked. I didn't think of it, she said. That was BS, obviously. She wanted half of whatever was there, so she was the gatekeeper. I said, no, you'll get nothing that the judge doesn't say. And she said, then no key. And I said, fine, half. Scott was pissed at me for capitulating, but I had a feeling there wouldn't be anything good in there. And if there was, I didn't care. I was already sick of the battle. Scott said I shouldn't worry too much. A verbal agreement means nothing. Just don't hand her over anything physically because you won't get it back. Back to Warwick. Aubrey let me use her car again and her credit card so I could sleep in hotels, and I went back. Along the way, I thought how fitting it would be if the box was empty. We search for meaning in life, and just when we think we have it, there's nothing. It would have made a good Edgar Allan Poe story. I was used to having these things pop into my mind by then. It was evidence I was more of a reader than the doctors had given me credit for. But maybe a better ending would be to find a cyanide capsule in there. Then I definitely know old me had my best interests at heart. I decided that, in view of the fact that I used to like books, I should try reading one. I bought something at the gas station. I had an aversion to Stephen King for some reason, so I bought a random one, Before We Were Young, I think. I liked reading it, not so much because of the story, but because I liked the process of turning inanimate pages into a world in my head. I really sank into it. I felt at home in it, somehow. Or more like, comfortable in a place where I could flee to. The story drove all my thoughts and cares away, and it made me forget I was driving on those long stretches in the plains. The Secret Box. I met Stacy at her apartment on my way so I could see Jamie. She had been against it, but I said, "Okay then, we don't go," and she gave in. She let me into the kitchen, and I could hear Jamie in the living room watching TV. She said to wait, but I went past her and sat down next to him. I asked him a few questions, and after a while, I got him to open up a little. He showed me this game where you have two fingers out, then one person taps the other person's fingers, and that makes his count go up, and you can transfer your count from one hand to the other, something like that. I can't remember, but it was fun. Stacy was impatient to go, but I let her wait until I could see Jamie felt like he was between a rock and a hard place with me wanting to stay and his mom wanting to go. We took 2 cars again, and she wouldn't produce the key until we were alone in the main vault. Jamie was with us. I opened the magic box. I insisted on that because it was my damn key, and I pulled it out. There was nothing in there but a journal handwritten by me. There was no money or anything of value other than a stainless steel watch, which was still working. I tried to give her the watch, but she ignored that and seized the book, flipping through it in case there was any money. I gave Jamie the watch. Stacy shoved the journal into my hands and turned to leave in a huff. Unfortunately for her, you have to wait for the bank teller to come back and let you out of the vault area, so we stood and waited, she avoiding eye contact and persistently knocking on the glass door at the teller. Jamie was trying to fit the watch on his wrist. It was too big, and I said he would have to take it to a jeweler. "A jeweler?" he said. "They work on watches too," I said. "They'll probably do it for free. You just have to take a few links out of the band." When the teller unlocked the door, Stacy burst out like a rodeo bull, dragging Jamie by the arm, and disappeared out the front door. The teller didn't know what to do, so I said, "It's better than having lunch with her." The journal. So I had some new reading material. It was written in small letters and looked pretty long. I went back to the hotel to get started. It started as if in the middle of a conversation, without any sense of purpose other than to record events. It seemed I had simply decided to take up the habit of writing a journal for its own sake. There were a lot of details about the day, my work as a car insurance adjuster, and random things that happened like what I had for lunch. Over time, it got more organized. I divided it into paragraphs instead of streaming out a solid bar of words going down the page. And I got more specific about things, cutting back on the abbreviations and vague references that made the first 20 pages incomprehensible in places. I learned to leave space after paragraphs in case I wanted to add anything later. It made for a fairly complete but disjointed and, frankly, boring narrative. I got curious about that job, so I called Stacy and asked her where I had worked, which she knew right off the top of her head. I asked her why she hadn't told me that before, and she said because I hadn't asked. I asked her, "Is there anything else I might like to know? Just so I won't keep bothering you?" She said, "I'll let you know. Maybe you should ask after you send me a check." I wondered if that was what our relationship had been like before, and I started thinking that, much as I wanted to get home, maybe I should stay in Rhode Island a while longer, or even move back. If that was what Jamie was dealing with, maybe I should try to get visitation at least. My chances would be better if I stuck around. That was a feeling that came on sudden and strong. Just like that, I thought I'd better get to being a father, because I'd been gone too long, and there was still some time to make it right. I might be able to flip the script. Instead of me being a vague memory, perhaps my absence would. The old me. I went to the insurance agency, which was in Providence, without calling ahead, and asked for the boss. I was led to an office down a dingy hall, lit by overhead fluorescent lamps, all that kind of unimpressive stuff. The door tag said Todd Shader, General Manager. He opened the door, and after giving me a long, searching look, said, "Jamie, what the hell ever happened to you? You still had money coming, you know." "I know." I didn't know that, but it made sense. "You haven't heard about me?" "No." "Well, there was a detective asking about you a while back, but that was a while ago." What an a-hole, I said to myself. Brown never said he had talked to Todd. Todd invited me to sit down. I explained my situation, and he took it all in without emotion. As a car insurance guy, he was used to listening to BS stories. But I had no reason to lie, so he just said, "Wow, Jamie, that's messed up. What can I do for you?" "I just want to know anything you can tell me about me," I said. He shrugged and, frowning, regarded the passers-by out the window for a few moments. "You were a good worker, Jamie, always on time. I had no reason to complain." "Todd, I mean about me. Seriously, just tell me the truth. I don't know if I was a good guy, an a-hole, or what. You can tell me anything." Again, he thought hard. "Jamie, car insurance is a shitty business. It's boring, monotonous, and you have to listen to all the BS from people all the time. They're either angry or desperate, and things don't go that smoothly. Your job is on the front lines, trying to cut people's payouts down as much as possible. Jamie, either a car insurance guy gets hardened to it and moves up the ladder with a trail of old ladies and moms in his wake, or he leaves. They need a car, and sometimes the payout won't get them a good replacement, even if they did nothing wrong. So they're pissed. And you tell yourself that's just the job, which it is. Insurance companies perform a service, and you can't give all the money away or no one will get anything. And actually, a lot of the time it goes fine. The car gets repaired, whatever, and it's not like medical insurance where people seriously go broke. But people get upset, and you were always sort of, I hate to use this word, but compassionate. And instead of either hardening yourself or sleeving, you sort of did both. Both? First, you didn't really harden yourself, but you turned it inside and ignored it. You always did a good job for the company, and you always made us money. But you never got used to screwing people over. But you never left. I thought it was your wife, like you couldn't get a better job and she needed money. I think it was for drugs? He raised his eyebrows, but I gave no indication if he was right. Oh, sorry to cast aspersions, but that's what it looked like, to be honest. But what do you mean I did both? The second thing was, this might sound dumb, it's just that what it looked like to me, but you kind of absented yourself by reading books. What? If there was a little downtime, you wouldn't put your head in your cell phone. You would say you'd seen everything on the internet and out of desperation would have to read a book. Those books kind of took you someplace else. I'm pretty sure you'd guess the guys in this business aren't big into reading. But you sat there slouched down examining every word like a scientist. It'd be hard to get your attention. Weird. I don't know if I'd say weird. I wish I had that concentration. It got you through the day. You didn't like it here, but you stuck it out. Well, at least until I vanished. Sorry about that. Oh, don't be. That vulture Wilson was only too happy to swoop in and take your cases. He laughed, but I was confused. All he had to do was give the final FU call and get his check. Huh. Wilson. You remember him? No. I stood up. Thanks, Todd. I'll try not to come again. Give your address up front. Your money is in escrow, courtesy of me. I thought you'd be back sometime. It's like $800. You're paying out a claim? It's not a claim. That's a surprise, Todd. You can't be such a bad guy. I have my moments. You call any time, and if you need any insurance... I gave him the finger, and we both had a good laugh. I took a different route driving back to Bakersfield, this time taking smaller roads. This is when I looked at Saratoga Springs and Syracuse. I got nothing out of any other towns either, but it let me stretch out the trip. The journal was giving me a lot to think about.